KCRW sponsors include A24, presenting Moonlight, a film chronicling 3 chapters in the life of a young black man discovering his identity and experiencing first love as he moves from childhood into manhood. In theaters now.
Hi, I'm Elvis Mitchell, and thanks for listening to The Treatment. Some of the most entertaining stories produced today, however, are not on the big screen, but they can be heard on KCRW's Unfictional, intimate stories and artful documentaries crafted by some of the most talented radio producers across the world. Check it out. You can find Unfictional on KCRW's iTunes page. From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. Welcome to The Treatment. I'm Elvis Mitchell. I am sitting across from Oscar winner, Golden Globe winner, Emmy winner, Dustin Hoffman. That's it. We're out of time. I'm sorry, Dustin. We've just gone through your achievements. We have no time to get to anything else. Thanks so much for coming back, first of all.
Thanks for giving me the easiest interview I've ever had. I'll see you later.
You're here to talk about your masterclass. Now, tell us what the masterclass is.
Well, one of my kids, Rebecca, she has a friend by the name of David Roget, and she went to Crossroads High School with here in Santa Monica. And it's his creation, and basically he had this idea of, well, he's got Serena Williams, he's got I think Usher coming in, and James Patterson, the writer. But as far as I was concerned, he said, could you talk to camera, talk about some of your experiences, and then also maybe have a couple of actors and coach them in a scene. And we talked about it, and then he said he had Jay Roach, who I like very much, a director who I'd worked with, and that Jay Roach would be kind of there to guide me. And so it's not very good at selling it, I guess. It's you buy it, and it's a course that you take, and it's in 2 parts. One is kind of coaching or directing a couple of scenes with actors, and the other is just talking. Actually, I was talking to Jay Roach, but it looked like I'm talking in the camera, and it's just answering questions that he asked me, and I'm glad I did it, because there were a lot of things that I wish that someone had told me when I first started out.
For example?
Tootsie was really not about cross-dressing. It was about acting. And one of the things that's satirized in Tootsie is to be specific. And somehow actors were kind of made fun of if they were specific. And there's a scene with Sidney Pollack where he says they wanted you to be a tomato, and you...
A beefsteak tomato.
Yes. And any other profession in the arts, like writing or painting, you go and you observe tomatoes, and you look at all kinds of tomatoes, and you decide the tomato you want to write about or the tomato that you want to paint. And as far as acting is concerned, you're thought of as being a little bit, or maybe it's less now, a little bit of a nut if you are specific. What kind of a tomato? The very fact that you'd ask that question. Well, when I studied, you went to these classes to learn the art of acting. What you didn't know is that when you would then go out for a job, that no longer existed. Because they say to you, if you get the job, okay, say that line and then walk over there and pick up that thing and do this and do that. And there's no collaboration in terms of, again, the specificity of what you're doing. You're someone who follows orders, and that was difficult for me.
Are you to have empathy with the character or the process, or empathy with what you're doing professionally, which is a really interesting question, isn't it?
Yes. I think it comes down to, is your work more important than what they call making it? I suspect I'm looking at someone who has made his own choice, meaning you, in terms of what you have decided to do, where you have full liberty to do what you're doing the way you want to do it.
Yes, in the basement of the Student Center building at Santa Monica College. That's the liberty that I have. But it's so but it's so funny that we're here, because as you said last time when you were here, this is where you got your start.
Yes. We called it Santa Monica City College then. And I went here because I was such a bad student. They had to sweep me out of high school. And I was the one who always flunked everything and then took the same thing the second time and begged the teacher to give me a C. You know. And so here I am at Santa Monica City College, where you go to get grades in order to get into, hopefully, university. In fact, I just asked someone outside if it's still that way, and they say it is. And I was failing, so that means I would have to take the first year over again. It was just like high school. And a friend of mine then said, we're talking about 1956. I think James Dean had preceded me here. But I had not thought about acting. I wanted to play jazz piano. I was a music major. And my friend said, take an acting course. And I said, why? I'm not interested in acting. They said, but you get 3 credits. And they won't flunk you. It's kind of like gym, you know. And that's why I took it.
It's the treatment. We're here at the theater school for movie stars such as James Dean and my guest Dustin Hoffman. He's talking about his masterclass. As you say this, I just found myself thinking, Sidney Pollack started as an actor. Mike Nichols had been an actor. Certainly Alan Arkin was an actor. There's got to be a simpatico that comes from at least going back to that word you're using, liberty, the freedom to feel like you can make a choice instead of saying, do this, you've got to play to the audience. I mean, you clearly clicked in a lot of ways in terms of just getting something, whether it be in conventional ways or not, with these actors who are also directors.
You hit on, I think, a very important thing. Kazan was an actor. Martin Ritt was an actor.
Yeah.
I would say that every director, everyone that wants to be a director, whether it's theater or film, should take acting and know what it feels like. Just, to be up there as an actor, to be terrified, because that's really what, when you're starting out, what acting is all about. As I said, one of the hardest things to do, is one of the first things we learned in acting class, we would have a small stage, and the teacher would say, get up and just walk from one end of the stage to the other. And it was still, I think to this day, it's an impossible thing to do, is to do it unselfconsciously and in a relaxed way.
It's so funny as you're saying that, because I think of so many of the characters that you played as being these guys who wrestle with fear or anxiety. You're talking about Michael Dorsey and Tootsie, and that fear was almost something he could taste.
Yes.
But even in Marathon Man, or when I just told you my favorite character is Wally in Agatha, or so many of these people that you played have been guys who've been wrestling with that. Even to some extent in Papillon, I mean, that idea of what do you do once you get out?
Yes.
The idea of these characters wrestling with fear, is that something that you find a way to make these characters work for you? Or Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate, some of these guys have been people. Even think about your character in Outbreak as being somebody wrestling with that kind of fear and using it as kind of a moral force.
I never thought of it that way. I mean, I was lucky enough to become a star off The Graduate, so I started getting scripts for the first time in my life, meaning I could kind of pick and choose. And I didn't do anything for a year because I didn't like the scripts, and I was just as intent about going back to the theater. And then this thing called Midnight Cowboy shows its face, and people tried to dissuade me from doing it because it was not a starring part. It was a supporting part. John Voight played the cowboy. But I think what I meaning I had a choice. I didn't just have to take anything, as Tootsie tries. It's one of the points that Tootsie makes. It's no big deal to play a woman. I mean, you'll take any part. If gender has nothing to do with it. You just want employment. But because I got offers, I could kind of pick and choose. And I think what I gravitated toward is what you're saying. I think I was always someone uncomfortable in my skin, and I think I probably gravitated toward those kind of people. I think you put it a different way. You kind of say someone who's anxious or who's
that fear is
fear
is there, and by instead of trying to pretend that this is not a part of these guys' makeup, there's at some point in many of these things there's an acknowledgement of that in some way or another.
Yeah.
And that seems to me to be a kind of an honesty as an actor, isn't it?
Yes, I've never felt, I studied with Strasberg. He said one of the things he said, which I thought was marvelous, he said, there's no such thing as a leading man. He said, if you met someone and some friend of yours said to you the next day, oh, you met so-and-so, what's he like? And if you answered, he's kind of like a leading man, your friend would say, that's some character. We probably know a few people who, they're like leading men, meaning they're very good looking, and at the same time, they're somewhat two-dimensional. The third dimension of, as you say, of fear and anxiety, they don't show you.
This is the sort of thing that's funny because you were named after an actor, but the kind of acting that you probably grew up seeing that you in your way were pushing against, and in the way I think that the 50s and 60s kind of demanded you do, was that presentational aspect of being a character, or rather being a leading man, where you were showing two dimensions and it kind of this kind of bouncing indomitability that showed you should be there.
Yes.
I feel like it's always felt to me that some part of you was constantly rebelling against that idea of those two dimensions, that you weren't seeing people and you want to play a person rather than playing an archetype.
I think the first time I was aware of it was when I was in high school. In fact, we mentioned James Dean because he went to this college that we're at now. And I was stunned because I was a teenager when Rebel Without a Cause came out. And I couldn't believe that I was seeing someone play an adolescent that was so filled with pain and doubt. And at the same time, he was so good looking. I thought only us ugly ones went through that pain. But no, here was James Dean feeling the same way. And I think that had a great impact on me. And I think Brando exhibited that also, because he, again, was an extraordinary looking man, and yet his characters were not two-dimensional because they were filled with vulnerability. It was a new kind of acting. I remember at the time I felt, there's a lot of good actors around, and there's always been a lot of good actors, even before people talked about the method. But he was doing something, and I thought, and my friends Duvall and Hackman, tilted the axis of acting, in that you saw his bone marrow. It was further than just ordinary vulnerability. It was deeper than that. And it's hard to explain it, but when he did On the Waterfront, here he's playing a fighter, a boxer, and yet there was something about him at certain times that was so soft. It was, there's that famous scene where he's in the car with his brother, Rod Steiger, and his brother is a member of the mob. And the story goes is that, and Bud Schulberg wrote it, and it was a wonderful screenplay, and Kazan's directing it. And there's a scene, in this scene, Rod Steiger holds a gun out to his brother, who is Brando, and is supposed to frighten him in terms of doing what he wants him to do. And Brando said to Kazan after a couple of takes, I can't do this scene. And Kazan said, why? He says, he's my brother. I can't believe he's going to shoot me. I don't care if he's holding a gun. That's my brother. And Kazan said, play it that way. And that becomes one of the most famous scenes in cinema. He says, Charlie, you're my brother. And it was so soft. It was so, it was a feminine side of him, I think, that was new. And I think Dean, worshipped Brando, the story goes. But I think it was those guys, it was that time where we were seeing a change. The American hero was not going to be John Wayne forever,
It's a treatment. I'm getting a master class from my guest, Dustin Hoffman, who's teaching a master class. There's more to come. Stay with us.
Make a donation of just $1 a day and you can join one of our exciting and exclusive Angel Clubs. Choose from music, books, DVDs, or cookbooks delivered right to your front door. Learn more and join now at kcrw.com/join.
Welcome back. I'm transfixed. It's the treatment. My guest is Dustin Hoffman. He's teaching a masterclass. What you were saying before the break, and I wonder if there's a way for you to tell prospective actors this, or people who was making a living as an actor but not really getting through what they want to, that there's a fearlessness, weirdly, in showing fear or showing what used to be perceived to be weakness.
Yes, that's an interesting way of putting it, yes. Brando said, you don't have to be thinking what you're saying when you're acting, because in life you don't do that. In life, language is kind of almost a camouflage for what you're really feeling. And that's what they then started, I think when I started acting, was called subtext. And I don't think that was used before. And Brando said, speak your subtext, say it. And he would sometimes talk to a cameraman before a take. Hey, what'd you do over the weekend? Oh, you barbecue or what? Oh, that's good. And they said, okay, Marlon, we're ready to do a take. He says, go ahead. And he'd keep talking to the cameraman. And they said, well, we're going. Go ahead. And he says, oh, so did you have hot dogs or hamburgers? And they say, they slap the thing and they say, okay, take one. And he would then shift his gaze off the cameraman to the actor he's supposed to be talking to. So he would just suddenly go, oh, you had hot dogs, whatever. And he'd look over the person. He says, yeah, and I really hate you. I think, and he'd go into the dialogue. So that it was just coming out at the beginning, at least in the first few takes, simply the way he's feeling. And the way you're feeling should be exposed, I guess. And that's what we don't do in life. So if you're talking about being courageous, very few people are that courageous in life. How you doing? Oh, I'm great. How are you? And it's all facade. I always said it's like when I first started taking out girls, all you're thinking about is, can I sleep with that girl the first night? But what you're saying is, oh, really? Oh, did you see that movie? And they say the weather's going to be great this weekend. But, your mind is elsewhere.
My guest, who's now making me understand why I get rejected by girls so often, is Dustin Hoffman. He's teaching a masterclass here. So tell me, there's going to be a student feedback part of this. I'm interested in that because how you were talking about being vulnerable and being exposed, and how do you give feedback in a way that really speaks to what's you're being given in a way that also doesn't scare people? Because as you're talking about all this stuff to me, it sounds completely terrifying.
Yeah, it is. I think art is terrifying, whether you're painting or writing or acting. We want to be in control. I mean, human beings want to be in control. We want to be able to gauge what we let other people see.
Isn't so much about technique? People saying you should be able to call this emotion up at this moment. That's a lot of what I hear people are taught in acting classes.
Yes, and if not, then to just be at the moment of where you are. I had an acting teacher when I first started studying, the late Barney Miller, and he had an extraordinary impact. He also told me after, it was at the Pasadena Playhouse, he said after 2 years, it was a 2-year, he says, you'll go to New York, he says, you'll stage manage, you'll maybe teach, you'll do assisting. He says, you're not getting anywhere for 10 years. And he was right.
Really?
So, yes,
he told you that?
Yes, he prepared me. He said, but you'll be doing a few things and you should stay with it.
So much what we're talking about here is being goal-oriented versus being process-oriented. And a lot of...
Explain that to me.
Well, goal-oriented is immediate success. Be angry in the scene. Okay. You can be angry in the scene, then you'll make it as an actor. That's the goal. Or a director saying, like, going back to Tootsie, well, you got to cross over to the side of the stage because the audience can't see you from where you are. So you are dying, but find a way to walk to the center of the stage so everybody can see you. Versus, no, you're talking about with Brando. Oh, how are those burgers? I don't like you. I mean, that idea is sort of like keeping the process alive.
Yes, it's all process. I worked with Emma Thompson, and more than any other actor I've worked with, it felt like she was rehearsing all day.
Wow.
She never acknowledged the camera. I would say to her many times, you have your back to the camera, and this is your scene, Emma. I don't care. She was just connecting. She was just rehearsing, literally rehearsing. If the director said, you got to turn around a little bit, she would do it. But I'd never worked with another actor who just treated shooting as a process, like you're saying, as rehearsal.
I find myself just thinking about what this has got to be, what you're going to be telling actors is to not be afraid to trust themselves.
Yes, very tough. What we do on the show is we do 2 scenes, and one is with a guy and a girl, and another one is with 2 guys. And I ask them to just read the scene without emphasizing anything. And one sees how difficult that is, because many times actors are asked to do that, and they suddenly start acting, not acting. And they're kind of talking about that. I said, well, no, you don't have to talk in a monotone. You just don't have to pay any allegiance to the text. In other words, you don't try to make sense out of it. And finally, I think I made the point. I said, what are you thinking? And I have them just improvising, just talking. And these 2 guys didn't know each other. They had never met before, these 2 actors. And I said, look at what you guys are finding out about each other that you have in common. And you're playing best friends. It was a scene from Good Will Hunting. And I said, just improvise. And they started to improvise. I said, okay, now just read the lines. But don't make any sense out of them. Don't purposefully try to make the scene work. And what I was trying to emphasize to them is that in your mind, you're reading these lines, but what you really want to do is to get back to what you were talking about. That's real. The lines aren't. And it's hard to explain it here, but once they start to realize that they can be speaking their subtext, saying it out loud, and that what they can do after that is speak their subtext through the lines. You can say, I hate you, and you can be feeling, I love you. And that is the kind of powerful performances that elicited from Brando, the kind of things that he did. Because we do that in life. We literally do that in life. Actors kind of say, I hate you. But in life, many times, there's a contradictory feeling. I really hate you. And what that's coming from is, I once loved you, and I don't trust you anymore. It has, it's, I guess I'm not making a lot of sense.
No, you are making a lot of sense. My guest who keeps saying, I hate you in my direction is Dustin Hoffman. It's the treatment he's teaching a masterclass. But this idea of subtext, if you go to the movies, and I'm guessing you do, it's kind of disappeared in movies. I mean, if you want, getting back to this idea of, not this idea, this need to be employed in an industry that's doing away with a lot of that subtext we're talking about. I mean, I don't know how you play subtext in a lot of these movies that don't have, they're all text. I mean, it's going back to the difference between being goal-oriented versus process-oriented. They're all goal-oriented now, or so many of them, I should say, are.
Yes.
That's got to be something you're teaching them, too, how they can try to mine subtext for an area in which it doesn't exist.
I saw an interview that Jean Renoir gave, the son of the painter Renoir, and he's a great filmmaker. And the movie I'd seen was Rules of the Game, which is
one of the greatest movies ever made.
Extraordinary, where he starts very real and slowly goes toward farce. He was speaking as a director, but I felt that it translated for actors also. He said, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have solved everything about a script. At a certain point, you have to go to work. He said, and what you don't know, don't force it into the movie, because the audience is your other writer. And I've never forgotten that. Let them fill it in. And that's, I guess, an answer to subtext, because let it be more complicated. Don't force an audience to know what you're feeling. I know in The Graduate, people would say afterwards, where were they going on the bus? What's going to happen to them? Some people would say, oh, they're going to get married. Other people said, no, they're probably going to break up. And they asked Nichols, and he says, they're going to turn out to be just like their parents. They're kids now. But when push comes to shove, he's probably going to be working for an ad agency in about 10 or 15 years. But he did not want to spell it out, These are terrible examples.
No, what you're talking about is making the audience the other part of the author that you're talking about.
Yes.
And when you're not answering every question, going back to Renoir, then you give the audience a chance to ask and answer its own questions.
There's a great thing that happened. I just thought of it if you want me to.
Sure, please.
In The Graduate, we were shooting in a place called Laverne, California, for the church scene. It was the church that Nichols wanted. It was the church that Dick Silbert, the designer.
Yeah.
And so we drove out to Laverne, California, and the pastor, or whatever he was called, naively said yes when they said, can we use your church? Oh, just 3 days. Don't worry, we'll fix anything. No, we're not going to, let me just say right here, never let a film into your home because they don't tell the truth. And sure enough, we're in there. It's not 3 days. It turns out to be, I think, almost 2 weeks. And they're putting holes in things to put lights on and everything. And he's dying. So we get to the scene where I have to run up the stairs of the church, and I go to the glass.
To tap on the glass.
Yes. And I bang on the glass and I'm yelling, Elaine, Elaine, to try to stop her from getting married and hoping that she would hear me because I can't get into the church proper. And I hear a commotion after a couple of takes, and the pastor or reverend, whatever, had completely lost it. And he's screaming, out, get out, I want you out now, get out, you're going to break that glass, get out. And they're saying, don't worry, if we break it, we'll replace it. No, you can't replace it. That's a gift from someone who's no longer with us. It's meaningful, whatever. And he said, I want you out of here. And Nichols comes walking up to me, and I said, what was that all about? And he explains to me, and he says to me, is there a way, because I'm banging straight in front of me like one does. He says, is there a way you can bang on the glass so it doesn't shake? Because he's not letting us continue. I said, Mike, what do you mean? He said, put your hands out, your arms spread akimbo, and then just kind of, but that's not the way you do it. He says, that's the way we're going to have to do it, or we can't finish the scene. So there I am with my arms spread out, feeling like an idiot, going, Elaine, Elaine. Cut. The movie comes out, and more than one critic says, what a brilliant stroke of genius Mike Nichols made. He had Benjamin Braddock in a Christ-like position, saying, Elaine, Elaine. The critic filled it in.
Exactly. Sometimes they get it right. So where's this masterclass being taught, Dustin?
So anyone can buy the class, watch it online at masterclass.com. The classes never expire. Your class comes with 24 video lessons. Each is about 8 or 15 minutes. The class can take you 4 to 6 weeks, but students are encouraged to go at their own pace because it never expires. There's 3 major parts. I talk to the camera. I talk with actors in terms of 2 scenes, and I get feedback from them. And I remember that when I did this, I said to the actors, because we had cameras there, I said, this is a lie, kind of what we're doing, because I'm not directing this scene that is going to become a movie. This really is just a scene that we're working on, and it should be approached that way. So I said, so let's rehearse, even though you're not going to be doing this in film. And we started breaking it down, and I was directing them as a teacher almost the best I could.
Please check out masterclass.com is the website. Dustin, again, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome, Mr. Mitchell, and this is not the basement of Santa Monica City College. It's a beautiful little studio.
Oh, dear God, he's acting now. The show is recorded and mixed by Melissa Morton. She's leaving again. I'll be by myself soon. The show used to be produced by Jenny Radelet, who also edits. I'm Petrovich. It's The Treatment. To catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.